First, I want to say thanks for having me on such short notice. It's really awesome to be able to do this for Pro Studio Live. So
yeah,
everyone watching, thanks for tuning in. So today we got an active rock, hard rock session with a local band called Silencer. They're a couple buddies of mine. This is Matt, the drummer. He's going to be playing drums for us for this first segment. We have kind of a large setup. If you tuned in for our show with Neil Dorfsman and Kenny Aronoff, it's very similar. We have a lot of direct microphones, some room microphones and overheads, and then behind us we have some condenser room microphones to pick up more of the whole kind of sound of everything.
Yes.
But do you want me to kind of like go through each microphone and talk about what it...
So I think we should start with looking at the specific microphone placement, and then I think we would track drums in this segment.
Perfect.
Something like that.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Let me start over here with the kick drum.
Cool.
So on the kick drum, the first thing that I set up was, I can't really pull it out, but it's this kick-in microphone. It's made by Telefunken. It's an M82.
Okay.
Great microphone. Actually, one of the best I've heard for kick-in.
And it's just inches inside the kick drum.
Yeah, it's a couple inches into the kick drum. It has modifiers, like EQ settings into it that scoop out some lower mid-range and boost up the high range, which is like, that's what you want for kick drum in this genre, really attacky and punchy. Then here we have a Wonder CM7, I think. It's a FET 47 type microphone condenser. Cool. Nice and like chesty, I guess you could say. It's got that nice punch to it. Gets a lot of what the microphone, the Telefunken, is kind of scooping out.
Okay, and I imagine it gets a little more the whole drum set.
A little bit, because it's a couple inches further away from the drum itself. It kind of picks up some of this stuff. But typically, it's not so much my dominant microphone with kick drum, so all the bleed is kind of a little bit lower than, it might.
What's your take on bleed? Are you are you trying to keep everything really separate?
For a genre like this, isolation is key.
Okay.
A lot of times it's common to have like a sample blended in with the natural tone, sometimes altogether just striking the whole tone and using a sample to replace it.
Okay.
So isolation is really key for something like this.
Okay.
But you might think with all these microphones, all you're getting is bleed, but it gets a little bit, when you're miking it so close, you can kind of control that a little bit.
Did we talk about the genre yet? I don't know if we said it.
Yeah, active rock, hard rock, kind of like heavier, sort of fast music, kind of screaming vocals, singing vocals.
Yeah.
So here on my snare drum, I have a Shure Beta 57. It's different than an SM57 in that it's a tighter polar pattern, so it reduces some more bleed.
Oh, awesome.
Otherwise, it sounds pretty much the same, a little bit more hyped.
Sweet.
And then next to it, I have a Neumann KM184, or KM84, no, KM100. And it's a small diaphragm condenser to pick up more of the frequencies that the SM57 doesn't really have. Sometimes SM57s sound a little bit narrow, not a lot of low end, not a lot of high end, but just enough mid range. The condenser that I use next to it is to extend that frequency a little bit.
Okay.
And then underneath, I have a Shure SM57, tried and true, you can't go wrong with it.
Yes.
Here I have a Shure SM81 for hi-hats, real bright, small diaphragm condenser, perfect for adding sizzle where it needs to.
And it's kind of pointing a little away from the drum set.
A little bit to eliminate some of the bleed as well.
Okay.
My tom selection, I have a Sennheiser MD421 on the rack tom, and then an Audix D6 on the floor tom. I chose the Audix D6 instead of 421 just because it's a little bit more hyped on the top end.
Okay.
So when the drummer strikes the tom, it feels a little bit more impacting, just frequency stuff. I don't know. I just wanted to do it. I do it every now and then, and so I figured why not.
Yeah.
Over here in the back, I have the Neumann KM84s in a ORTF pattern behind the drummer to kind of capture an image of what the drummer might be hearing.
Yeah. What's ORTF? Sorry.
It stands for, it's a French radio broadcast system that developed a certain stereo miking technique back in the day.
It's like a wider angle, right?
It's a wider angle than XY, and it provides a really natural sounding stereo image. I like to use it for drums because it's not super wide, but it allows me to really leave a good, generous hole in my phantom mono area for the kick and snare to just be really punchy, really in your face.
Yeah. It's like one of those setups if I'm remembering right, that was from when people started trying to develop to mimic how you hear things,
Yes.
right? So there's like a series of different, it's one of those,
I
right?
believe that it was developed for that purpose when stereo broadcast started becoming a thing, when they wanted to capture orchestras,
Right.
not just using one microphone.
Yeah.
So they developed different techniques. This one, I just happened to like it for drums.
Yeah.
That's pretty unusual too, to put it behind the drummer, right?
Yeah, it gives it a little bit of a
like it.
darker tone, and I like that sometimes, just because the air, as it's being hit for the drums, it's projecting outwards, and everything just kind of seems to be moving this way.
Yeah.
So having this side kind of warms things up a little bit.
That's interesting.
It can get very shrill when you're recording drums because of cymbals, and you just want to, I try to keep things balanced, have control over high frequencies and low frequencies. And then I have these Coles ribbon microphones for my spaced pair overheads. I'm using them more to capture the cymbals than the overall sound of the drums.
Okay.
And I chose these because they're darker. Ribbon microphones tend to run very dark.
I love using these as overhead.
They're fantastic.
Yeah.
There's some ribbon microphones you can't really use for overheads. Most you kind of can. These ones are fantastic for drum overheads.
We had some questions about these because they're so widely spaced. People are wondering why you have them so widely spaced.
Okay.
And then also, I think there was some question about whether or not the camera up here, it's kind of like a fisheye almost. I don't know cameras, but so they're wondering if that one's actually pointing down at the ground or more at the cymbals. Or...
That's a good question. This actually is pointing directly down at the ground. If this were an eyeball, it's looking at no cymbal.
Okay.
However, because of the strength of the projection of this cymbal, it still picks it up.
Okay.
And it's not so bright to where I'd be concerned about hurting the ribbon microphone. It's not directly over a snare drum that, ribbon microphones are delicate, and you always want to be considerate of that sort of thing. So I try to keep things a little bit further away when it comes to ribbons.
Okay.
Now, that's not the particular reason I chose to have them so far apart. Like I mentioned, I'm trying to go for width, or this one was kind of just to get the overall feel. This one I kind of want to use as just cymbal microphones.
Okay.
So putting them a little further out might let me get that, when you put on headphones, feel that really far right crash and that really far left crash.
Awesome.
So that's kind of how I have them set up. I'm not sure if that is kind of like a fisheye lens or not, but they were right. Whoever caught that, you were correct. It is pointing directly down.
Sweet.
But in listening to it, the kick and the snare drum are still coming through like phantom center.
Yeah.
So that's all pretty good.
Cool. So is that, I'm sorry, I'll stick on this for a while. So is that something that you kind of default do nowadays, or is that like in this one instance you kind of listened and moved it around?
For this genre of music, I sort of default to the very spaced pair microphones for what I would consider my direct overhead microphones. Cool. These are what I'm going to be mixing the loudest for my overheads. This one I'll be secondary, so it'll be kind of like from the widest to the most narrow, and then it'll be kind of quieter as it goes. Whether it's a ribbon microphone or a small diaphragm condenser or a large diaphragm condenser, I tend to typically put them a little wider away from the drums than you might think is acceptable. But again, use your ears. I was using my ears and it sounded good where it was.
Sweet.
And then I have this microphone over here, a Shure SM57. It's just a dynamic microphone to capture some of the drums. It's off center from the drums because if you look at it this way, it's drawing a straight line down the kick and the snare.
Okay.
So when you have a drum set and you're sitting in front of a drum set, you have like the kick is here and the snare is off to the side. So it's like, which one do I choose? Which one's in the middle? You just move it over to the side a little bit and boom, you got a straight shot. Everything on the left is on the left, everything on the right is on the right. And because it's mono, it just kind of picks up everything anyway.
Okay.
And then like I mentioned, I have these two large diaphragm condensers up top. They are Sound Deluxe U95s. They're tube condensers, I believe. And I just chose to throw them up because I heard a session here that had them and it sounded fantastic. So I rolled with it and they're sounding awesome so far.
Sweet.
Take advantage of this awesome sounding room.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I know we're focusing on drums for this first segment, but because we're here, I figure we may as well take a look at the guitar stuff I have set up too.
Sure. Let's do it.
One of the things that I'll be showing in this is how to use a guitar cab for bass guitar as well alongside a bass cab to split the frequencies of the bass guitar into multiple different controllable sections. So keeping that in mind, I have the guitar and the bass cab set up pretty close to each other. Typically, I would have a gobo or some sort of thing in between to separate them further and isolate them. Like I mentioned, isolation is key. But for the sake of this demonstration, I just decided to put them pretty close together. I have a Mesa rectifier cab. I think it's a traditional. So it's a little larger than most guitar cabs. It has vintage 30 speakers in it, wow. Made by Celestion. They're really warm. They have a nice presence to it. Typical for this genre of music and this build of guitar cab. On one cone, I have a Shure SM57, and it's pretty much dead center on where the cone meets the cap, except if this is where dead center is, it's a little bit south, right kind of at the line where the cone meets the cap. Okay. And I matched the placement with this 421 on the opposing speaker, just so that I had room to work with. I didn't want to put them both on one speaker because they're both kind of big microphones. It'd be difficult to get them in the same place, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then I have another 421 on this bass cab, about the same position. Actually, yeah, it's about the same position, a little bit further away from the center to get a little bit more warmth. And then when we get into bass guitar, I'll explain why I chose to do that. Exactly, but that's just how I have this stuff set up. This will not be running with the drums. I know that it might be taboo to have guitar cabs that are going to be super loud in the live room with the drummer, but they're not going to be used at the same time. So we're really just focusing on drums for this first segment. But I just wanted to kind of show that.
Yeah, that's great. So I think we're all ready to record. We already, if people were watching before we started, we were doing tests and stuff.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
We were sound checking for a little bit, so apologize for the delay. That's my fault. But it's all good. We're here now. So
yeah, no, big session, dude.
Should we go to the live room?
Yeah, let's go to the live room. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
And yeah, and you're all ready, all rehearsed.
Cool.
No, it's sounding pretty good.
I'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye, live room.
I love that.
Hello, control room.
All right.
Let's get down to it.
So, like I mentioned, this is an active rock song. So it's going to be fast. It's going to be a little loud, but I mean, I love this stuff. This is the kind of stuff that I really enjoy working on, and I think it'll be good. Matt, can you hear me, buddy? Cool. All right, you ready to take it from the verse? We can just kind of run through it and get a whole pass and then punch in where we need to?
Yeah.
All right, word. I'm going to take it from the first verse. You got 8 counts, and you're in. You ready? Cool. How'd that feel?
Felt good.
Cool. There was a couple parts that I feel like maybe could be a little bit tighter. Do you maybe have it in you to maybe do one more full pass through and then try punching in some stuff?